Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond Train podcast. I'm your host, Leo Dalton. Today, we have a very special episode. I have been looking forward to this episode since I created the podcast. Honestly, this was something that I manifested having these two visionaries on. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity, and I'm more grateful to be able to share whatever we speak about today with all of you. So. Um, yeah, I want to get right into it. Josh and Adam, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yes, our pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, so I ask an introductory question to all my guests. Maybe you guys could just answer one after the other. The question is, what is health? And it's a big question. Definitely get a lot of different perspectives on this one. But yeah, what is health? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How does it manifest? So yeah, I'll let you guys have the floor there.
Health. What is it, Josh? Isn't health the absence of disease? I think
That's the definition of it. Sorry, the neighbor's blowing leaves right now. Let me go close the window.
Nice. And away he goes. So that's a good question. The absence of health or the absence of disease. What is health? The question of what is health is something we asked in our School of Health recently. And I'm still going through the answers. It's kind of cool. There's a lot of consistencies, which is nice. Health. What is health? Health is a balance. Health is adaptability, is being able to put yourself out into the terrain and live symbiotically. It's a physical balance, it's an energetic balance, an emotional balance, and a spiritual balance. That's what I say health is. Josh, what do you got now that you're back?
Yeah, I agree. You're not going to go by the medical book's definition, that is the absence of disease. Yeah, it's all about balance. It's all about symbiosis. True health is living in joy, which I think is something a lot of us are actually working towards. But I think that's the goal. But it's all about creating a nice, healthy balance, living in harmony and symbiosis with nature. That's the way we're supposed to evolve, not through antagonism. So just one of those things. Can't we all just get along? If we all live symbiotically, we'd probably all be pretty healthy. But yeah, I agree with Adam, and striving to live in joy, I think was the true healthy person.
Well, and Dad would always say, this is cool. Dad would always say, health is simple. People are complicated. So this is one reason we have our health issues, because of what we do and what we create. But good question. What is health? What is health? We're going to change the dictionary definition. Damn it.
Right, yeah. And funny enough, I remember Mr. Jacob Diaz, the undercover virologist, actually brought that quote up in our episode together about 10 episodes ago. So yeah, I love it. I think that's definitely pertinent. It's definitely applicable. Like, we've overcomplicated everything, right? Health is simple, right? And that's something that we kind of got to, but and that's something that's kind of reoccurring, right? How simple health truly is, right? Just living in balance with nature. And we just overcomplicate it, right? With all the questions that I'm asking you today, I'm going to overcomplicate it for a little bit, but
bring it on.
Yeah, at least we like it. So
yeah, that's why we're here, to make sense of the complicated experience. So yes,
yeah,
part of our journey, exactly. Right? Cool.
Yeah. So I guess to follow up on that, I think an interesting question would be maybe, what is disease? What do you guys look at? Like, how do you guys classify disease, right? And maybe it is just the absence of health. Maybe it is that simple. Maybe we can flip the script there, but because disease, from my perspective, and definitely seems to be something that comes up over and over again. It seems that there's only a few causes, right? You're talking about deficiencies, toxicities, and maybe trauma, like injuries or maybe emotional traumas, things like that. But yeah, maybe you guys can elaborate on what disease is.
Go, Josh. I went first last time. It's on you. Pass.
Disease is a process. Health is a process, and disease is a process. And we kind of go back a lot to the line from the Shawshank Redemption, where he says, you get busy living or you get busy dying. If we're stagnating, then we're going, towards decomposition. To us, disease comes from stagnation. You got to figure out why there's stagnation in the first place. But you look at the river's always nice and fresh, and the pond, garbage starts to bloom in there. So everybody's looking for a magic bullet, but yeah, it's disease is a process. It's we're not struck by lightning. We don't get sick by accident. When it comes to children being sick, it's a different story because that's generally a lesson for the parents because children didn't bring that on themselves.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just a process, and it's one of those things. Yeah, we get busy living, we get busy dying. It's up to you, to figure out which direction you want your life to go. But it's a process. That's why there's never going to be a magic bullet for it. The fix is not going to come from a pharmaceutical or even out of the bottom of a supplement bottle. There's work that needs to be done. And this day and age, everybody wants that quick fix and they don't want to do the work. They don't want to take accountability for their own health care. So they're relying on doctors or so-called experts to tell them what to do. And I would lump both traditional and alternative medicine into that, whether they're pushing the pharmaceuticals on you or whether they're giving you antibacterials, antiparasitics, and things like that. It's kind of going against how we evolve in the first place. But yeah, disease, it's just a process and it's up to us whether we want to get busy living or we want to get busy dying.
Yeah, and that's something Dad said a lot. The idea that disease is a process, health is a process, life is a process. This is all a part of the experience. And I like you had Daniel Roytos on one of your last ones. I haven't listened to it yet,
Yeah.
but there's something he
He's
says which I
great.
kind of agree with. He's awesome. Yeah, he gets it. He knows. He knows the score. So the thing is, there's something he says about there's only one disease, and it's just basically being out of balance. And disease or dis-ease, cannot exist where there's no stagnation. So part of it is for me is if you go with the flow of what's going on, it's easy. Okay, if you resist, then it's uneasy. It's not easy. I think about being in the ocean and surfing, and it's like you go with that wave and all is awesome. You fight against it and it will smack the crap out of you. It ain't easy if you're going to fight against nature that
Mm.
way. And that too, this is us. For Josh and I, the terrain is not a theory. Is it a model? It's a paradigm. These are the laws of nature. This is how nature works. And our job is not to convince people. It's your job, it's everyone's job to understand how they fit into this experience. We just happen to have lived a life, under our father that was a little different than what most people did. So now we can share from lots of experience what's gone on. But I think disease it's a simple experience. It's you're out of balance. It comes down to those four bodies. There's a physical issue, which affects the energy and the emotions and the spiritual experience, or there's an energetic issue, which affects the physical and the emotional, and then the spiritual, or there's an emotional issue. So it's about that. It's not being in ease with what's going on. I think that's a new one for me. What do you think of that, Josh? Oh, he's muted. I love it when he talks. You can't hear him.
That sounds good. I talk to myself all the time.
No one listens. What are words for? No one listens anymore. But so good question. Good question.
Yeah, well, and I mean, these answers are exactly why I was so excited for this episode because, like, really it aligns so well with what I think and everything that I've learned up to date. And maybe that's just because I've learned so much from you two. And but anyways, maybe I'm a little biased there. But
Don't blame
anyways,
us. You can't blame us.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's great, guys. That's really helpful, I think. And yeah, it's funny how at the end of the day, like we tend to get back to these simple things, right? It's processes, right? It's living. And I love the quote that you brought up, Josh, that get busy living or get busy dying. That could be more true, right? I'm reading an interesting book right now, School for Gods by Stefano Donna. And one of the main kind of lessons in the entire book is that it's about focusing on living and even in a way thinking yourself immortal is almost helpful, right? Because if you're focusing too much on the death processes, then it's going to manifest in your life, right? It's very our mind is extremely powerful. But anyways,
Yes.
yeah, you guys are bang on, honestly, bang on. I appreciate you guys so much, honestly.
No, yes, we appreciate that. Well, and it's interesting, as you say these things, and stop us anytime because we'll jump all over you with this stuff.
Yeah.
Let it out, right? There's something to be said for what it is that we do to ourselves, what it is that we're thinking, and how old are you out of curiosity?
23.
Great, which is nice. You've been through less bullshit than we have. Oh, can we swear? Sorry, you can bleep that one out.
Yeah, go ahead. You're all right.
Less, okay, less crap than, we've been through. As I'm 50, there's more crap there. So it's really exciting for us that people like you're younger, and that you're listening to us, what we've done, what we've been through. And it is, at the end of the day, the funny thing is all we're left with is our thoughts. If you just think about lying in bed at night and how uneasy that is for many people. The pandemic was interesting because a lot of people got stuck by themselves, and they haven't done that in a long time. Or they got stuck with their family, and they haven't done that. The guy that goes to work every day and now he's stuck with his wife and the 2-year-old, and how uneasy is that, and what goes on then health-wise. It's interesting to me that's what it comes down to. Dad said one of the 1,000% the cause of chronic disease gets back to an emotional experience, that we create disease, right? So the thought there is, that's an important thought. And Josh and I, we've seen it, with what Dad did for decades. We've seen it. And it's one of the things I love to say is, what Josh and I say, this is not what we think. There are things we think. We're learning to think for ourselves these days. But most of what we say is not what we think. It's what we know from repeated experience, from Dad having done things for decades. And there's something I'll say real quick, is with the microscopy work these days is very interesting. Right now you can take a 4-day microscopy course and buy a microscope, and these people know everything. When Dad came across this work, the woman was in his office for over a year doing this, and he did not believe it. He wanted to see repeatedly over a longer period of time. And one thing he would say to anyone learning things is to observe patterns over a period of time before you start making claims or judgments or sharing things. And this too, for all of us, we're a student of the terrain. If we can just observe patterns, look at our lives and see when things went on. Health issues, typically something emotional happened before that. If you look at the patterns of our lives and how things have set ourselves up, it's really interesting. There's a lot we can really learn from ourselves. We appreciate you learning from us. How did we learn? Well, Dad forced it upon us. We lived it. This is just our life, which is interesting.
He told me to actually never do what he does because he wanted me to enjoy my life. So, I'm currently working on, incorporating some different things into my life, but yeah, it's not the easiest road that my father went down. The stuff he went through is something that a lot of brilliant minds have gone through, and nobody should have to go through what he went through. Adam and I have been somewhat lucky as far as that goes, but we're well aware of kind of what's gone on with that in the past. So for us to be able to make sure the work carries on is incredibly important. And you'll notice a lot, we always say we. And, somebody asked me, you always say we, why do you say that? Well, when I say we, I mean me, my father, Adam, Einstein, Béchamp, Lamarck, but Rudolf Steiner, Andrew Taylor Still, all of these people whose work has kind of been pushed aside. Those are the ones that need to be remembered. And people say it's like you're doing future medicine. No, we're going back to an old way that actually worked. People just forgot about it. So my goal is to make sure the work of my father and these brilliant people before him, his work is carried on. Because the only way this world is going to evolve is through symbiosis, not where we're going right now with antagonism. Now, as much as I say that, generally all we hear from social media is negativity. I do believe there's a lot more positivity going on in the world than we're led to believe right now. And when we tend to get isolated by ourselves, stuck in our brain, asking Dr. Google, going on Facebook and things like that, we're generally not getting the happy stories out there. And it's leading to more and more isolated thoughts of fear. And fear is the lowest frequency we can attain, and that's how we're controlled these days. So those are something we really need to get away from, but go back to the ways of nature. First, you have to understand how nature works, and that's through symbiosis.
Yeah. Well, we are anti-fear here.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you one last thing is this is what happens. Sometimes you get us rolling.
Like wind-up stories. Sorry, probably need to rein us in and direct us a little bit.
No, but the idea that, well, and then we lose our train of thought, which is fine. Everyone has seen a lot of horror over these past few years, and the reality is what we know is true is for every action there is equal and opposite reaction. So for the amount of horror that the world has seen, there is awesomeness happening. You're just not seeing it. You're seeing it. You're sharing it with people, which is great. Behind the scenes, God, I mean, the things that we're doing, the connections that we've made right now, crazy stuff is happening behind the scenes. You know, what they've done recently to us is they've they've actually got us to band together. We've been divided and conquered, this
Yeah.
whole community, over history, you know, and now the world knows their health is important. And all of a sudden, the bridges that are being made, you know, I wouldn't have met Andrew Kaufman if it wasn't for this, or Don Lester, you know, and David Parker and Alex Zeck and all these other people. We're doing some really cool things. And wait till you start to see it. When we start to, like, we're not dumb enough to do the whack-a-mole and pokes our heads up so we get smacked. We're doing things behind the scenes, bridges are being built, and as the carpet starts to be pulled back, we have a really good, solid infrastructure that's being put together. It's a really interesting time. It's an exciting time. So for anyone that's afraid, you can be concerned, yes, but know that things are happening. Wow, just start to resonate that way and you'll start to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well
Back to
put.
you, Liv.
Yeah. No, I guess all I want to add is, I've definitely learned to look at the whole COVID fiasco as a blessing. And it certainly shifted my mentality, right? I would have never stumbled upon Andrew Coppin's work, and it would have never led me here, right? Like, so everything obviously happens for a reason. And I've told this story a few times, so I won't bore my listeners, but it's certainly it's all about your perspective, right? And we talked about this before too, like, how you view it, right? I sang poor me for the longest time, even coming into the knowledge of the terrain and all this stuff. It was, I'm the black sheep, and I'm the everyone's against me in society. And guess what? When you think like that, it's true, right? It's true. So you got to
Yeah,
get away from that. So yeah, that's great, guys.
definitely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Our rabbi used to say that everything in life is written, but it's up to you whether you want to make it a comedy or a tragedy.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well put. Yeah. All right, I want to get into the microscopy. Darkfield microscopy is what you guys primarily work with, correct?
Yes. Dun dun
Yeah.
dun.
So maybe you guys can give me a little introduction. We haven't really touched on microscopy. I'm not well versed in it, but you guys are the right guys to talk about it. So yeah, maybe a quick little introduction. I got a couple questions that I kind of want to ask, but we'll see where it goes too, right?
Sure. It's a good, you know, we appreciate you saying dark field microscopy. There's the confusion with live blood analysis, which is a brand, you know, nutritional microscopy. So when people look at us and listen to us, and we do analyze the blood live, but we do not do live blood analysis. It's a little confusing. It's actually a brilliant marketing thing. If we could have come up with that, damn it. So yes, dark-field microscopy. Dark-field is a certain type of microscope. You see things a little differently, and live blood analysis is one aspect of it. And then we do something very different. It's a similar imagery, but a very different interpretation and philosophy. And we're doing some neat things too. We are learning more about the history of what's really gone on. As we have felt aligned with people with microscopes previously, well, recently we've realized that we're not. They're not aligned with us. What's going on is totally different, totally different. And we've taught people previously that try to incorporate what we do into their experience, but it doesn't work that way. It's one or the other. Okay. So at this point, the microscope is the tool that Dad used to learn how the body truly works. And when he came across the microscope, when he met Gaston Naissons up in Canada, he looked into the microscope. It was the first time in his life he saw the blood live. And he said he got chills. As a medical doctor, you never looked at the blood live. And once he saw that, he said he knew there were things he needed to learn about. Now, that experience went on, that was a single experience Dad had. And then eventually he went on, and the way that coincidences work in the world, teachers came into his picture, a couple of them, German teachers. We actually hired private investigators to find out where they learned, and we do not know. We're pretty convinced that it came from Holocaust, you know, when they were actually experimenting on our relatives and things like that. So the irony of out of one of the worst things that happened historically comes one of the best things potentially, you know, for our health and understanding who we are. It's really interesting how these things go on. So Dad used the microscope, and like I said previously, he got into the microscope. There was a woman working with him. He didn't believe what she was doing. It was a little crazy, but she was doing it repeatedly. She was seeing things in the microscope that represented the true root cause of what these people were going through. And when she would address that, it was like the domino effect. Things would start to fall back into place because it's that root cause. Something set you off center in the beginning, and then things went weird. And we say the car analogy, not that the body is so mechanical, but if your car is out of alignment a little bit, over time, you end up way off center, right? So as she looked at the blood, she addressed things, and those cars got right back on track. And all those other little symptoms and different things seemed to just fall into place. So after a year of seeing this, Dad started to work with it. Now, the microscopy experience is pretty interesting because so many people are interested in us because of the holograms. They're awesome. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And when we look at your blood and you see that thing that you knew that was going on in there and it makes sense to you, it's an amazing experience. And it's kind of funny these days. I'm having a little bit of fun. You'll like this, Josh. I had someone over here yesterday and I looked at her blood and I showed her the best spot in the blood first. The first thing we're going to do is show you the best spot because that's your potential. That's in the body somewhere. We're not going right to your rouleaus and all that crap, which we can see in everyone's blood, by the way. So I went to this good spot and she was like, oh my God, what's that? And I said, that's the COVID. And she went, oh my God, really? And I said, no. And then I went on and she said, oh my God, what's that? And I said, that's the COVID. She said, really? I said, no. What's that? That's the hydrogel. Really? No. It was like, but every time she could have believed it. You know what I mean? Like if nothing
people
else,
are believing it based on what these people are saying with their microscopes. It's a huge issue right now.
I gave her a good lesson in critical thinking. And this is our job too. Our job is not to convince people. We're never going to tell you you don't know because we know and we're the experts. When we look at your blood, it's an educational consultation. And the concern is for you to understand what's going on. And all we really do with the microscope is translate what your body is saying, okay? Now, the thing is, Josh and I, what we know about how the body works, we can have conversations with you, we can look at your history form, and we can tell you quite a bit. But people listen to us much more with these images, right? The images make sense. They're amazing. And we're not cherry picking. Like I'm not looking through your blood to pick that one image that fits what I want to say to you. All right. I look at the blood. I'm a technician. So people come to me. I get the blood. My job is to take pictures of everything I see so Josh can see what I'm looking at. And it's like looking at you. If I miss part of the blood, I'm missing part of you. Okay. So I take any place between 80 to 120 pictures of each person. And Josh goes through, and the reality is he gets between 12 and 18 pictures for the person's report. Why so few? Because the reality is it's the holographic experience. It's the same image showing up multiple times. All right. The body is going, it's the leg. I need some body work. There's scars, there's scars, there's scars, there's scars. So it's kind of nice. And if you listen, most people are like, I knew that. I knew that. Oh, I forgot about this. And we'll even, like, the history forums are funny. People will say, oh, I forgot I had my kidney removed. And, is that important? Yes, it's
generally,
important.
we just kind of validate what people, intuitively know.
Right.
And generally people have gotten us when they've been through traditional medicine, they've been through alternative medicine, and then they come to us, basically. That's kind of the way it's always been. And I'll clarify too with alternative medicine, I don't put acupuncture and Ayurvedic medicine into that alternative medicine label. That is the true traditional medicine. It's been around for thousands of years. It's clinically proven. I really appreciate their point of view. I think it's important to go back to the beginning though, Adam.
Well, I wanted to,
as far as the philosophy goes, because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves.
Go ahead.
So we have to understand where this actual work came from. So the Darkfield scope came up in the early 1800s. And what a light field scope is the light goes directly through the sample. What a Darkfield scope does is it splits the beam and then it goes through the samples. So we're seeing different things with Darkfield that people can't see with light field. So it was really brought into the mainstream with Antoine Béchamp and his discovery of, he called them microzymas. A lot of different names for them. Wilhelm Reich called them bions. They've been called somatids, symbiotics, activator, progenitors. We've even heard some really ignorant people call them parasites. But we're not going to talk about them that much, though. All right. So this is where the philosophy of pleomorphism comes into play. And the philosophy of the work is way more important than the microscope is. All right. The microscope just gives us a different view into the terrain. So the philosophy of pleomorphism is, the body's supposed to flow like a nice river. We throw a few dams in the river. Now we've got a stagnant pond. And in that pond, our pHs change. And if you're treating the pH, you're not treating the cause of your issue these days. So I just had to throw that in there. The pH is just a result, just a measuring tool. So as we start to stagnate, these microzymas, then they morph into bacteria, the dreaded bacteria, right? Now, I don't believe there's such thing as bad bacteria. It's all a positive. It's all there to do a very specific job based on what your terrain is dictating. So the body creates a very specific bacteria to clean up the terrain. It's cleaning up your garbage. And what a lot of people don't talk about, the waste product of the bacteria is nutrients for your body. This is incredibly important. So once again, the waste product of the bacteria in your body is nutrients for your body. Similar to, we've been working with some regenerative farmers. They said they've never actually seen a deficient soil ever in their travels, not once. The nutrients are always there. What's lacking is the microbiology. If you don't have the microbiology, those nutrients stay bound in the soil. So the bacteria go in there, they process the nutrients, now the soil can utilize it. Same exact thing happens in our body. The same exact thing that's going on in your garden is the same exact thing that's going on in our body. So if we don't fix the stagnations now, then the bacteria changes into a fungus. All right. So, and now fungus are big, they're cleaners. They're definitely, they're working on cleaning the blood as well. But if you get to a certain point where you're not really doing what needs to be done, now the body's going to help you decompose. All right. So this is not a bad fungus. This is all fungus that's doing something very specific based on what your terrain is saying. And the beauty of pleomorphism is it can be reversed. Okay. You remove that dam from the river, the body balances out, the fungus goes back into a bacteria and then back into a healthy microzyma. So there's this beautiful symbiosis that goes on in the blood. And if you're in there trying to kill your germs, and it's funny because they go in there with antibiotics, and what happens is the antibiotics target a specific bacteria. Well, the body goes, well, to hell with you. It doesn't kill the actual bacteria. The bacteria just morphs into something else that the antibiotic does not recognize. But what's going on is now it's pushing the sickness deeper and deeper down into your body. So your symptom might go away, but a few years down the line, now you've had chronic issues. So it's so important to understand the philosophy of the work. Microscope is awesome, all right? But I talked to Bear Orlando yesterday, and he says science is nothing without philosophy. You have to understand the philosophy behind what you're actually doing, and that's key.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That was something that I brought up in problems in science nowadays is definitely separation of philosophy and science and spirituality and science, right? It's these things are not separate, right?
All right.
I just want to clear one thing up there. You said through the pleomorphic cycle, you said that it can go through the pleomorphic cycle and then to reverse it, it goes back down to the microzyma through like it goes kind of back on itself. So if it develops through bacteria to fungus, it goes back to bacteria, then the microzyma. I always saw this picture, right? The famous pleomorphism picture. And I always had the idea that it kind of kept going, right? That it kind of was like a cycle, like a circle, right? And that it kept going. I don't know if you want to clear that up or
That's a
what I'm
great
kind of seeing
question.
in that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Dad's second teacher would analyze a drop of blood for 3 weeks, and she said that it would die and regenerate and die and regenerate several times. So, yeah, I've never had that question before. I think what we're trying to do is balance the body out so it stabilizes things, but I would think it works what you were saying as well, because that's the ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The fungus helps to decompose our body. We go back into the earth, regenerate new life. So it's definitely cyclical. What we're trying to do as far as the body goes is make it so you don't decompose first. You should be decomposing in the grave, basically, and a lot of us are decomposing while we're still alive. But that's a great, yeah, nobody's ever asked us that before. And that's it definitely goes both ways. That's a brilliant way of looking at it. In nature, yep, it's going to go through the life cycle, it's going to go through a decomposition cycle, it's going to create new life and keep going through that way. Our job is, in the health field, in the wellness field, is to get it so you don't end up in the ground before you start to regenerate life.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
and it's
great question,
interesting.
though. Yeah.
It is. It's a good question. It's interesting too, because as I'm looking at the chart here, we're learning a lot more ourselves right now, which is really nice. Dad, there was a point where it was symbionts, endobionts, bions, um, symbiotites, proteits, mycetes, like there are different names for the same thing. But now what we're learning is there are different points in their evolutionary cycle or their cycle. So we're connecting dots, okay? And as I look at the chart, we start out with, and this is great. We talked about this in our training course with our School of Health students, that it gets weird with us. The idea that consciousness comes here and the symbionts help us to They basically become our coherent experience and help us to create who we are. So the consciousness comes in, the symbionts help us to create our physical form. They will create everything. Okay, someone was saying the fat particles, they're fat particles. Well, there's a lipid part, there's a lipid point. Someone was saying exosomes. We're pretty convinced, and we're checking on some research that that's a point. In which case, we have all this exosome research that will then start to work with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But then you also have the idea of, okay, we worked with stem cells for a long time. And I think of in the beginning, those videos we used to see where the sperm and the egg, and then the cell divides and divides again. Eventually it differentiates into different organ cells and things like that. So I don't know for sure, symbiont, stem cell, there's a process, but this is when things get really interesting because you start out symbiont and depending on terrain and what's going on, these things turn into everything and anything. Okay, it's that Wilhelm Reich experiment too, that experiment 20. He observed the grass decomposing over a period of time, and then he observed those bions coming out and then recreating new life. So like Josh said, there's that cycle where it keeps going. There's something where it goes and it turns into bacteria and fungus, and then we have an overgrowth of candidas and things, and then there's a block, so we remove the block and it goes backwards. But it's a little bit of all of it. I think it's funny because I can think of Berlando answering this question and us having no idea what he's talking about in like 2 minutes, because it can get, this is where I can see this. I'm very visual. You can see this quantum experience of here goes the symbiont and it's going to do all these different wonderful, beautiful things, including things like cancer, because it's all part of the symbiotic terrain experience.
Yeah,
That's a good question. Good job.
Yeah, sorry. I believe it creates all life as we know it, and the terrain is going to dictate what type of life what type of life it's creating. Anything with life is going to have symbionts or bions in it, and that life that's generated is coming from that particle. I've looked at minerals before, and they'll have symbionts on it. Plants will have it in there. I've made sauerkraut. You'll see all this wonderful symbiont activity and all these germs in there that just make me hungry. So I believe that all life as we know it comes from those particles, and a fair portion of the lifestyle practitioners just discount them as fat particles. That's the food you ate. So not only are they wrong, but they're discounting the single most important thing I think there is as far as creation goes, as far as life goes. So I can't underestimate the importance of these.
Yeah, well, I think Antoine Béchamp even said himself that all life comes from and returns to the microzyma, right? I think that was one of
Yeah.
his big things, right?
Well, and that's what we realized too. We talked about this in the training course. If the symbionts create us and then when we're done, they help us to decompose, then the reality is we don't die. The physical body is one thing, but what happens? I think that's awesome. And I'm in Mexico now. In Mexico, they talk about death. It's Dia de los Muertos, and they hang out with their relatives. And, Western culture, we don't talk about it. We want to vaccinate ourselves from it. Immune from death. We want to live forever. It's a part of the experience, to enjoy that. And I really think that to me is bizarre and weird and very profound and intense. We are symbionts. And then when we're done with the physical, the symbionts, they go back. We're a part of everything. You know what I mean? When my neighbor passed away, it was like, I felt like he was around. You know what I mean? He was. His symbionts were here.
Yeah, it's Lamarck basically said he didn't believe in extinction, and not for the religious overviews that people are talking about these days, but because life is always creating life. Even non-life can create life, but that's a whole nother story for Artur Sala right there. But yeah, he didn't believe in the evolution concept those days because he didn't believe that things died out. They just changed and morphed and adapted into something else.
Yeah,
which is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Couldn't agree more, honestly. And yeah, just sparked a bunch of thoughts in my own mind here too, right? Like yeah, I don't even know where to take it, but I guess sorry.
You want to take it? I'll tell you where to take it. Go ahead. What you got? Thank you, Cleveland. Good night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's enough that will give me stuff to think about for a month. But that's great. Yeah. So I guess what I want to ask is, when we're seeing in the body, you're seeing all of these different species of microbes, and you see the Staphylococcus or the Streptococcus or whatever it may be. What why are we seeing that? Why are we seeing all these different microbes? How does that fit into the pleomorphic model? I'm sure you guys have a great answer for this.
Because
It's funny because we see I mean we'll see all sorts of bacteria and stuff in the blood. The truth is we could care less what they are, right? We're trying to figure out why they're there, right? And we know whatever genus they are, whatever bacteria they are, they're there to do a specific job. And people I'm sure could go do some studies, go down the rabbit hole, to try to figure out, okay, this bacteria was for this. And a lot of that is out there, but for us, we never really cared. It was just telling us that the body is working. If we're seeing a lot of germs in there, then that means the body's working pretty hard. If we're seeing a lot of fungus in there, then we know we're dealing with a chronic issue as opposed to an acute issue.
right.
So for us, it's very, very simplistic, and our goal in life is to get people out of the rabbit hole, which is something I'm really working on myself, and more research is always necessary. But yeah, we'll see bacteria in there and the personal cricket. I could care less what it is. I just know it's there to do a job. I got to figure out why it's there in the first place. But the last thing I'm going to do is try to target it and kill it. Absolutely.
I had someone here the other day, it was funny. And yeah, we look at the blood and people are so funny. We are interesting creatures, right? So I show the blood and I'm talking about how great the red cells are and the white cells. And she's like, what's that? Like there's this one little thing, right? And it's like, oh, that could be your candida or something. She's good enough where I can say, but Josh and I will never tell people these things. If we look at, we
Yeah,
can look at 1,000 good things and say candida, and that's all people hear. You know what I
people
mean?
don't
So they
focus on.
focus on it.
I
Well,
can do
there's
an
one,
hour consult. If I mention candida or parasites once, that's all the person hears. And
yeah.
both of
But
those things
so
are there to help you.
yes, yeah, there's one. And it was funny because her response was, oh, hey, little buddy. Yeah. I was like, that's the right response. And it's like
Yeah,
that little guy, she wasn't, she's heard us enough, and she said, he's there to do something. There's not a bunch of them. I was like, yeah, that's the idea. And even one of our students in our course, he's like, Naissans's wife was just on recently on the Beyond Terrain. Are we on Beyond Terrain? Which one are we on? We're on Beyond Terrain.
on
The
train.
terrain
Yeah,
on Terrain Theory podcast. We're on that
yes,
one.
yes.
So was on with that podcast, and she was showing some images, and there's a white cell, and there's a little guy, and well, why is the white cell not attacking that guy? Because he's a bad bacteria, but it's not a bad bacteria yet. So people were confused, because in our world, it's like, well, there is no bad bacteria. And this is where I had to say, look, Dad was with Naissance once. I really don't know, and then Dad learned from other people that no one knows who they were. So I don't know how aligned we were as time went on with a lot of these people. But for me, it was like, well, there's no bad bacteria. Why is the white cell not attacking? Well, white cells don't attack anything. They're there to symbiotically do something. So if there's something there and the white cell doesn't care, well, neither do I. It's there. So maybe it's just a juvenile, bad bacteria, and it doesn't have, didn't get a switchblade
Just
yet.
out
So
getting into trouble, rebelling,
yeah, and the bad bacteria is like, well, when you're 18, we'll put you in jail, or with the white cell, But it was interesting,
That's
and
good.
the one student is like, what do you guys see, And the reality is, we're not looking at that. We're looking at a bigger picture. We look at the blood and we want to see everything together. And there's a few little things there. That's fine. There's always going to be stuff everywhere. I mean, there's stuff all around, But if we see a pattern, if we see an overgrowth, then that's a different story. It's still there to help you, But yeah, it's a fine line with that.
it's about
Yeah.
putting the puzzle pieces together. I mean, if I look at the blood, obviously I'm looking at lots of things. I'm looking at the plasma heavily. We're heavily delving into the plasma. And a lot of the newer microscopes, if people aren't using a oil microscope with basically a microscope with an oil condenser, they're missing probably 2/3 of the plasma view. If you're using a dry condenser, you're missing the river of life, basically. So 60-70% of what you should be seeing, you're not seeing at all. So we delve heavily into the plasma. Obviously, the bions, the somatids, we look at heavily. The shapes of the cells tell us a lot. We're not going to get into Rouleau right now because that's one of the most mislabeled things that we've ever seen is Rouleau. I've never seen anybody talk about platelets with the importance that my dad talked about them. All right.
Hmm.
They're for blood clotting, which is supremely important, but platelets are how we heal. They're a huge part of our healing process. All right. He was taught, and I've never seen the documentation of this, but it always resonated with me that there's no human DNA in a platelet. It's a plant that lives with us and helps us to heal.
Hmm.
Even if you look the way it grows, it almost grows like it's a mushroom, the platelet will form, and then the fibrin form out of it like these tentacles coming out of it. It's like the mycorrhizal connections going down into the soil. So it's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. So there's a really misunderstanding of the importance of platelets. You can get a lab test that tells you the amount of platelets that you have in your blood, but it does not tell you the size or the shape of them. And the size or the shape of them tells us a ton.
Yeah.
If they're tiny, you've got a chronic trapped inflammation. If they're large, you've got an acute trapped inflammation. So there's different things we look at that it's really about putting these puzzle pieces together. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, as we've gone through this, we've seen that we haven't really met people who are really totally aligned with what we do.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that this terrain movement is coming to the forefront, but we have a lot of people who have no practical experience talking about the terrain. And my feeling is a lot of them are getting into it just because they believe the germ theory is wrong. So for us, we can only speak from practical experience. This is kind of what we grew up in. I've been doing the blood for 20, 25 years now and worked with Dad since, 1989, and grew up with some of his witch doctor and voodoo stuff. So understanding what we're actually looking at in the blood, we realize that a lot of people aren't looking at the blood the way we're looking at it.
Right.
Which has
Hmm.
created a great opportunity for us to be isolated. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is why these conversations are so important. So I know we've said some things that are making you think, but you've said some things that are making us think too. And it's
Well,
super important. This is how we're going to start to connect the dots on things.
I'm gonna raise my hand. And there's something, to get back to with the Darkfield microscopy experience these days. With what we do and Dad's experience, health is simple. Let's break it down to sympathetic and parasympathetic. Let's get real
Mm.
simple. Now, people are complicated. So we're going to take a microscope and we're going to show you that big picture. And most people miss the forest through the trees. Okay. These trainings that you're going to see, the live blood analysis community is insane with the amount of minute details that go on within the blood. It's microscopic world. Okay, there's so much going on, but the reality is there's all these different shapes of red cells, right? And this one is this, and this one is this, and this one is this. There's a supplement for this, and a supplement, and we can change the shape of your cells with the different chemicals, supplements and things like that. But the reality is there's a simple reason why things are off center. And it's not about the hyper focusing. This is the irony of our work, Liev, is we use a microscope to get people out of the rabbit hole. We're going to go microscopic to show you a big picture. And it is funny. The job I have is hilarious. Here's this microscopic world. Now, if you have questions, raise your hand at the end, and then we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, just pay attention and watch. And how often people are like, what's that? What's that? What's that? It's like, just relax. Settle down. It's the name of my new book. It's what I need to hear myself and what we all should do. Settle down, relax, and look at the big picture. Okay.
Mm.
And there's something to be said for listening. I asked Berlando, what is terrain? And in the beginning of our very first School of Health webinar, he said, it's listening. It's observing, just being, go outside and just sit out there. And I did this once. This is fun. Close your eyes, look around first and see what you observe. Okay. The sight is limited. Then close your eyes and observe what you hear. And the hearing goes much farther. So you're hearing things. It's a trip. It's a different perspective. This is really our job too, Liev, is we translate what your body is saying is one thing, but we're just trying to give people a way to look at things a little differently, and they're going to get answers. And the irony is this, okay? It's changing the frequency of what you do. I have this cool painting over here that Josh got me from, it's a ridiculous painting from the Killer Clowns from Outer Space movie from way back. And as the colors of the lights change that I have at night, I play my music and the lights change because I'm a rock star in my own mind, right? And you see different things when the colors change. Just think about the black light experience. That's a slight change in frequency of light, and we see things totally differently. Okay, people are talking about going up on the airplanes and seeing orgone, because there's a different atmosphere going on up there. This is it. Let's just open up a little bit, or let's just look a little bit to the side. If we have questions, if we can look at nature and think about what's nature doing, we're going to get some interesting answers. I mean, and it's ironic too, again, some of Dad's great quotes were, people would say, what about juicing? And Dad would say, I've never seen a deer juicing in the woods. The one the other day, Josh, was someone was asking about colonics, and I thought, I've never seen a deer do a colonic in the woods. But these little things, this is our job, the perspective of using a microscope to zoom out, and it's microcosm, macrocosm. Okay, as above, so below. I believe we are symbionts. Dad would say that cancer, we are the cancer of the earth, and the earth is rejecting us. This is why this is
Mm.
happening, why we're getting these different diseases and things like that. Um, so yeah, I think that for someone like you is great for us. As you're younger, you haven't been beaten down by a system yet, and I'm grateful because it's the pandemic that did this.
Mm.
And you want
Yeah.
to, and microscopes, what's going on with microscopes? Okay, this is hilarious. I'm shifting my stuff all every day. This is how we navigate, though. The universe guides us. If you come up against a brick wall, you can beat your head against it, or you can go around it, right? The ridiculousness of microscopy these days drives me crazy. Oh my God. One more person gonna send me a damn live blood image of some hydrogel. Blah.
Yeah, for
Um,
any of you listening out there, please do not send us any videos or images of live cell analysis.
and stop listening to these. Stop listening to these people. Okay. David Nixon has had his microscope for less than 2 years. Okay. So
Mm.
the simple idea is, do you want to listen to us? We've had it for 40 years almost, and we've seen patterns. All right. And we're not saying the
Yeah.
same thing. If you want to listen to that, that's great, because you're going to get scared and you're going to get sick. And then eventually we don't have to have you in our world. Yay. It's a
Yeah.
filtration process. Sorry, that's not the great place to go. But the advancements that are happening, the whole world is becoming aware of this. Okay. You'll like this, Josh. My girlfriend's sister is a medical doctor who does not believe in my girlfriend. My girlfriend is a PhD in biomedicine. Anna Maria Oliva is awesome. She's lecturing with us at Anarchapulco. She's a superhero. So her sister doesn't believe her. Pandemic comes around. Her sister works at one of these hospitals in Barcelona that's overcrowded. Well, no, it's not. Her sister says, that's weird. The news says my hospital's overcrowded. It's not. And her sister says to Anna, you know what? Um, I work in intensive care, and 50% of the people in there, they die. It's a 50-50 no matter what. You live or you die. She said, the people that we can't help during this pandemic, that we say, sorry, there's nothing we can do for you, those are the ones that lived. She says, I think we're killing people. So
Mm.
then the hospital attacks her. She's the only one in the whole hospital who hasn't gotten vaccinated. 2 years later, you'll love this, Josh. 2 years later, she talks to Anna and she says, okay, I'm ready. I have a few other doctors and we're ready to know what we need to know. What do we do? Where do we go? How do we learn? And Anna says,
Yeah.
I can show you. And the woman says, someone in my group says, we need to get a Darkfield microscope and learn. And Anna's sister goes, oh, well, my brother-in-law is Adam Bigelsen. And they all go, oh my God. So I have medical doctors that want to know about Darkfield because of the ridiculousness that people have been
Amazing.
sharing. Those
Yeah.
idiots, excuse my language, those ignorants who don't know what they're talking about. Yes, no judgments, no opponent. Those people have pushed that microscope into the forefront. And now there have been advancements in technology.
Yeah.
All right. And we
Well,
just put,
let
yeah,
me just finish up this conversation, because that narrative
okay.
is,
Yeah.
whether you're for this or against this, whether you're for a jab or against it, if you're arguing about it, you're kind of part of the problem these days. It's a distraction from the actual truth. All right. It's a distraction from the truth. The truth is we can take care of ourselves if we understand. Now, initially, the information coming out from both sides, you need to listen to see what's going on if you don't understand it already. But now the fact that people are still arguing about it, all it's doing is dividing people even more.
Sure.
Okay. So the truth is, if you understand how nature works and then that we evolve the same way as nature does, then you can take accountability for your own health care.
Right.
And I
Mm.
remember one of Dad's interviews, he looks at the camera and he says, healthcare is your responsibility, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We want
Yeah.
to blame it on everybody else, right? So sorry, just
Yeah.
with those things. And the last thing I'll say on that is people are sharing these massive images with all these crazy names on them. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the hell they're doing with the blood. Okay, for the live cell practitioners, all of us doing the dark field are taking a drop of blood from a capillary, from the finger. Only one cell can move through that at a time.
Yeah.
Anything larger than a cell could not physically be possible in your blood, or otherwise you would have had a stroke. These
Yeah.
are holograms. All right. So they're coming up with all these crazy claims, these big things they're seeing in the blood. Those are not physical. They cannot
Mm.
possibly be in that drop of blood.
Yes.
So it's a
So
total misunderstanding of
Holographic
what,
blood.
yes,
yeah. Yeah.
the total
Yeah.
misunderstanding of what they're doing. So, anyways, we should move on from that subject because
Well, I want to say
Yeah.
though, I'm grateful. That's we don't want to waste time. To Josh and I, Josh isn't interested at all, and people are like, "What do you think?" He's like, "I don't give a shit." And even in the beginning, it was like people
I
came to
love
us,
it.
they're like, viruses," and I was like, I had to think. I don't remember Dad ever talking about a virus ever.
Yeah.
I'll tell you two things. HIV. He said he didn't see any patterns and thought it might be man-made. That's one thing. And I'll tell you about hepatitis in a moment. But to end this conversation, If people have questions about what's being seen with the microscopes these days, our response is don't even listen to those people. It's a waste of your time. Okay. Message and messenger, right? The message is wrong. The messenger shouldn't be trusted. They've been doing things without, they don't even know what they're talking about. And I have shared images with people. Okay.
Mm.
David Nixon got an email from me, and his response was, "Who are you and whose images are those? And what are you accusing me of?" It's like, dude, these are my images. He shut up. I haven't heard from him, but still, what they have done is awesome. They have pushed microscopy into the forefront. And you know who's coming to us? The people
Mm.
that see through that crap. Okay, the
Yeah.
Terrain Family Telegram group, there are real people that want to do this with us. And there are people that are grateful because they do work with microscopes. And the reality is they're saying our community doesn't deserve what's going on. However, technology has been advanced. And we have a real potential now. There are a lot of people that can take our courses as we start to offer them and can learn what's true. Okay.
Mm.
And the reality is we're on a fence. Josh and I actually are fighting about this right now because he developed a blood basics course. Okay. This is what everyone should know. Everyone, even you, I mean, people without microscopes, this is the basics of what's going on. Okay. And then you won't have to ask these questions. So
Mm.
my thinking is everyone should get it. Like all these people, they're being trained by the thousands right now. China is producing microscopes that suck. If you're interested in microscopy, do not buy what is being sold these days and be patient. That's what I can tell people.
Mm.
So as I want to share this with the world because they need it, put it out there. But then there's the other side of, no, you know what? We're not going to teach any idiot with a microscope this work. If you
You
want
gotta
to learn
understand the
this with us,
philosophy first, and that's what I was talking with Bear about, and he
yeah.
totally agreed.
If you want to
That's what
learn
our
this,
course is. The course is the context behind the blood basics course. If you don't understand the
Sure.
philosophy and the science, then get your head out of the damn microscope. And that was the problem
yeah,
is we'd teach these workshops and people would incorporate holograms and pretty pictures into their knowledge of live cell analysis.
right.
So it was sobering for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we've got people out there, killing parasites and killing this. If your microscopist is preaching
Yeah.
fear, they don't know what they're talking about, and you should go see somebody else. That being said, if you want to live in fear, please go to them. Don't come see us.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and I do think, in the end, it's about consistency is one thing. We've done something for a long time and there's consistency there. And sorry,
Yeah.
Josh, as you interrupted me right at that one spot, there was one last point and it went where? Damn it. Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. Yeah, we're right. We're going through this right now. I want to share this with the world. My thinking is if you've taken that, if you think live blood is cool, you ain't seen nothing. There's live blood, and then there's beyond, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, no, I think, yeah, if you want to work with us, we have a 13-week course. We have another one we're putting together. I think you need to be with us for 6 months, and then we'll start to
Mm.
share that stuff with you, because I like people, but I can't trust people. I trust the universe. The universe, though, might have you screw me because it's in my best interest. The universe I trust. And
Yeah.
we've taught people that teach people that there's bugs in your teeth and we need to kill them. And the response is, don't tell anyone you learned from us. We didn't
Yeah.
teach you that crap.
Well, it's
Yeah.
so important now that my father's not here and some of the greats aren't here. I'm very protective of our work and protecting the integrity of the work. The work's going to carry on regardless. I mean, the work there's been things have carried on from civilization to civilization by this one guy in a cave for 30 years who didn't let that message die. So I'm not worried about the message ever dying. I'm worried right now about keeping the integrity of the work my father and the people before him did. And that's
Yeah.
kind of number one in my book. So
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
shift the conversation just a hair here, talking about observing nature. I'm starting to get into the regenerative agriculture and the permaculture world. And most of them say you shouldn't even touch your property until you've observed it for a year, right? Watch the patterns on it, see what's going on there, and it makes total sense. So, like Adam said, if you want to have an answer to something, first go outside and just look at what's going on in nature. And a lot of times the answer is right there. I've never heard one farmer say that parasites in the soil are bad for the soil. Not
Yeah.
one. So they're always
Yeah.
so happy. In fact, the studies are showing the larger percentage of roundworms you have in your soil, the healthier your soil is. Right? So why would it be
Interesting.
any different in our body?
Yeah.
All right. And this is the biggest
Yeah.
thing. People love to argue with us about parasites. The alternative world, everything is a parasite, and they want to kill all your damn parasites. That's why I
Yeah.
love the Eastern, practitioners. They don't talk about parasites being a bad thing.
Yeah.
They're created for a very specific reason. So I was
Yeah.
talking to the farmers, and he's like, "Yep, What happens, you create this wonderful microbiology in the soil. There's all this bacteria. Well, now you got too much bacteria going on. So here come your roundworms, right? And
Yeah.
what they do, they're like the fish processing plant. They go and eat the bacteria and process the nutrients on a much larger scale for you. So
Right.
what do you think's happening in our body? We get stagnation, right? And then there's things in the body that can't be worked through. They're these blocks. So the bacteria overproliferate, right? So people want to go kill the bacteria and things like that. No, the body creates parasites to go and process the bacteria for you and help to process nutrients for your body. It's this beautiful, beautiful symbiosis. And this is what Lamarck talked about. That's how we kind of evolved, parasitic and adaptation.
Yeah.
The animal, eats the plant has to evolve, and we evolve together. So
Yeah.
Adam says it perfectly. If you have an issue, you need a question, go outside. A lot of times the answer is right in front of you. We
Yeah.
evolve the same way that nature does. We're not separate from it. We're not above it. I think we're still trying to figure out our role in it, but we
Yeah.
are part of nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learning from nature, mimicking nature.
Definitely.
That's yeah,
It's
I mean, and I just think to the Flexner report when he mentioned that observation is incomplete, that we need, empiricism and randomized controlled trials or whatever he said. He did say that observation was incomplete, and I couldn't disagree more with that. Because mimicking nature is truly the goal. So I want to offer actually a little pushback here,
Okay.
but I think you guys can handle it.
Okay.
So you mentioned that in nature, the deer doesn't use colonics, it doesn't use supplements per se, but I've never seen a deer do microscopy. You know,
Yeah.
But yes. Where's my sound? Where's my sound effects? I'm usually on the sound effects on that one.
Yeah.
True too. Well, that's the thing too. Is when I had a guy once. He was a business coach, a coach of sorts, and I said, "Look, you just go through my shit so you can see and show me where there's holes." And of course, he went, "This is amazing." I said, "Yeah, I know. Fix my business." So, but then of course he goes through the process, and he said to me, he called me a week later. He said, he said, "You told me things I knew." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Some of that I put in the history form." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So what's the deal?" And I said, "Yeah, but you didn't know how it fit together. And there was other
Mhm.
things you forgot about. You didn't know those." And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "And then I told you who to go see. You didn't know shit about that." And it was funny because he went to our osteopath, worked on it for 20 minutes. And he went to him for his arm, has been tweaked for 30 years, right? 20 minutes later, it was better. But as a side effect, love the side effect experience, he was out in the waiting room and he was reading a pamphlet, right? He's got his reading glasses on. And then when our osteopath is done, the osteopath actually worked with him and he didn't even think the osteopath worked on him. Like he's just touching, he's like figuring things out. And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "You're going to work on me?" It's like, "I already did." And he's like, "Oh my God, this is a miracle." And he says, "Wait, before you leave," he said, "Go pick up that pamphlet again." And the guy picks up the pamphlet to read it. And he has to take off his glasses because his vision is better now. Right?
Yeah.
Crazy shit. And it's funny because the guy was like, he's questioning me. And I'm like, "Dude, I appreciate that." I said, "You do know these things. And the reality is, you don't need to do this forever. What we do live is awesome. We educate you and empower you so you can do your own shit." And I think we all have these intuitions, but we've been beaten down because of all kinds of stuff from cartoons to songs and TV shows and movies and our parents and, everybody, that we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our intuition. We look at the blood, like Josh says, we validate what you know. We tell you what your body's been telling you. And the reality is, I don't look at my blood. Josh doesn't look at his blood. We don't need to look at our blood. I don't even take anything. I have stem cells. I have exosomes. I got isopathics. I got everything. I don't
And you
need to
don't
take
need
it.
to. You don't need to. So I'm going to get back to your question there because it's a cool question.
Go.
There's a couple parts to it. One, yeah, you don't need the microscope to understand the terrain. That's just a tool for us.
Right, right.
Sure.
I'm hoping by us teaching the course that a lot of people aren't going to do the microscope. They're going to get into the farming world, or they're going to start to make conclusions and take this world into the next level by doing things based on a philosophy. So
Yes.
you don't need to understand nature. As much as we preach that we have to evolve as nature does and things like that, and we've always had very homeopathic philosophies in the past. 100 years ago, it was much easier for people to live off the earth, right?
Mhm.
So these days, with doctors' intervention, the second leading cause of death in the United States is doctors' malpractice. Around on their numbers, 500 plus people die a day from doctors' malpractice alone, and that's by the AMA's own numbers, right? So 100 years ago, they weren't taking out your appendix because they thought they didn't need it. You weren't getting hit by cars. Well, maybe 100 years ago, they were just starting to get hit by cars.
Yeah.
So we live in a very different world. So the indigenous culture can live off the earth easily because they don't have that intervention that we have. So
Yeah.
right now, it was a great point you made. Sometimes we need the help. I'm not
Yeah.
against, somebody doing a colonic on occasion if they're really backed up. It's not
Yeah.
going to fix your problem, but it's going to provide some relief. I'm
Right.
not against somebody popping an Advil if they're in pain while you're fixing the problem.
Advil.
But if you are long term taking anti-inflammatories, anti-inflammatory is anti-healing. But for acute situations, you don't throw the baby out with the bath water.
Right.
Yeah.
So with what we see these days, I mean, we see people who've had so many surgeries, head injuries, birth traumas, things like that. You got to get a mechanic in there to do some physical work. As much as we believe that emotions cause 1,000% of your sickness, once your emotion becomes physical, you got to do some physical work. You can't just go to your therapist and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
That's just bringing things up to the root, and you can't really release it physically. So you got to take care of the physical.
Right.
So it was a great point there. There's a time and place for everything. I
Yeah.
don't believe in long-term taking of anything outside of joy. And I'm still working on that because it comes intermittently right now. But if there's something that's going to make you feel better while you're fixing the problem, I'm not against it. But we live in a very different world, which is a lot of the reasons, a lot of the homeopathy isn't working like it used to because they're not attending to a lot of what's going on physically with the person. It's become more complementary as opposed to something that can run a whole case just because of the doctor's interventions and accidents and
Right.
physical traumas that we've gone through. So it's a
Right.
great point, Leo.
And it's
Yeah.
nice
Well, great
to,
answers. Because, oh, sorry. No, you go ahead.
no, I was going to say in Dad's book, as I'm reading The Doctor's Manual from the Germs again, it's ironic how often he actually supports doctors and says trauma surgeons, they can put you back together. There's been advancements, and there are
Absolutely.
different
Yeah.
doctors, saying when they said, well, we need to change. I forgot what it was. There was a procedure they needed to change, and all of a sudden there was less people dying. It's like, oh, we made things sanitary or something. But there is, Dad would say, I'm not Eastern, I'm not Western. This is integrative. We've advanced as a species, and there's things that we can do. Josh is right. We didn't have the cars. A deer doesn't. A deer's not driving a car. Deer get hit by a car all the time, but they don't have the bullying. Is there a deer bullying? Deer peer pressure and things like that.
Not on their bikes,
Right?
but oh, damn it, so and so saying this about me.
Yes, right. There's gender shaming among deer, and stuff like that. So there's something to be said for that. But yes, you're right. There are advancements, and it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's about a balance of what goes on. And I
It's a
do,
different. It's all
yeah,
right. Go.
different society. I did. Well, I said it. It was funny because I said that the one time I met Amanda Vollmer, and I said, "Yeah, I don't take anything," And she was funny because she had did a presentation right after that at Music and Sky, and she said, I just met Adam Bigelsen, and he reminded me there's a 0 point. Like that's where we want to be, where we don't have to take things,
Mm.
But and unfortunately, a lot of us are in different places where we need something. And it's funny because Josh, at one point, we were going to do the bumper stickers of "fuck supplements." Excuse my language again. But oh, and my nerd camera zoomed out. Sorry.
Yeah.
Nice. Um,
Cool.
but the thing was, she said, meeting people where they're at. She's got seniors; they've been taking pills their whole life, and you can't say stop taking your pills and go, eat a plant. You have to give them supplements, meet them where they're at. But it's still the Band-Aid. For us, we believe that if you've got a crack in the dam, you put a Band-Aid on the front of the dam while you get to the other side, to the root of the issue, and start to work on it. So yeah, Advil, thank God for Advil. Oh my
Yeah.
God, the times, like, can you imagine life sometimes without Advil? At the same time, I have my
Take a
tuning forks.
Yeah, I mean, people are
Yeah.
so quick. How many people do you know taking their high doses of vitamin C daily and they haven't eaten an orange in 4 years?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yes. That was
I
the
mean,
quote of the year from Brendan Murphy's podcast. Someone posted that, Josh, and said one of us said the quote of the year was "Just eat the damn orange."
you know,
And notice where you're at.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Then the
notice where
argument
you're
Yeah.
is,
at.
well, they're making oranges with no vitamin C whatsoever anymore. And Daniel
Yeah.
Lloyd has some interesting points on that. But you've always got a farmer's market around you. Go to the damn farmer and get your damn thing, and even better, grow it yourself. But
Yeah.
there's and the supplements, they're giving you something in such a high concentration that does not exist in nature.
Yeah.
Your body's not going to be able to absorb that. Your body works at one speed, and that's it. So
Yeah.
it's just another way where man thought they can improve on what nature provides, and they've gone wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, well put. Very, very good answer. I probably would have answered it similarly, but you guys did a perfect job on that. And it just makes me think like back when I was kind of learning all this information, getting into the train. I was still in university actually, and I did biochemistry. So, and I took a lot of microbiology, and it was actually a lot of genetics as well, which kind of annoyed me. I wanted to learn more about metabolism, but anyways, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But what I was realizing was reading through my textbooks and learning about all this stuff. It was like, what we're learning, even in the modern kind of way of explaining it, right? Through, whether the claims that they're making or not are valid, right? What they're explaining in the textbooks don't necessarily go against the terrain, right? I often find that it supports the terrain. It's just the perspective that you take on the observation that doesn't fit, right? It's the
Totally.
perspective of the observation. If you look at the observations themselves, they don't actually go against the terrain. And I think that's something that, I think is important to at least consider, because something that I like to do is look through my textbooks. I do a little segment on Instagram now where I'll open up to a random page and talk about the random topic in my first year biology textbook and how it fits in the terrain model, how, apoptosis
Yeah,
fits in the terrain model. It's the self-cleaning
totally.
of
Totally.
the body, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's something that's interesting because, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that's important. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like what you guys are saying about this, because osteo is something that really resonated with me too. That these are acute things, right? I went to an osteopath, and um, it was, she tried to kick me out as fast as she possibly could. She didn't want to see me anymore, right? It was very like, 3-4 sessions and then it's done. It's like, you can come back when you feel bad. If you
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
bad, you can come back. But
I'm
as
not
long as
here
you
to,
feel
yeah.
good, don't come back. Don't
I'm
come
not
see
your
me.
crutch. Yeah. Right.
So I love that, and I love that's what you guys are doing, right? It's like you're showing people the how the puzzle fits together, right? And I think that's so fascinating, because self-reliance is a topic that I've been interested in for a very long time, and even before kind of learning about the train. But self-reliance, I don't want to rely on supplements. I don't want to rely on, yeah, one big thing is mouth tape, right? I don't want to have to tape my mouth every night. Like I want to correct my airway and my breathing patterns and all these things, right? If I need to address that. So yeah, and I think the philosophy, like that's central, because that with coming with the terrain comes I find a lot of study in the alchemical tradition, and um I find that really powerful because it's applicable to so many things. Like you guys keep referring back to the regenerative farming and the gardening, and that's just such a beautiful connection, that as above, so below, right? It's one of the
Yeah.
alchemical principles, and it's so true. It's so true that you can apply this to all these things, right? You can apply what you see under the microscope to
Oh yeah.
what you're doing out in the garden, to healing the body, to absolutely
Yes.
everything, to how you
Right.
run a business, right? It's the funniest thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
Absolutely.
anyways, that's just my thoughts on that. But we're kind of getting up to time here. I want to give you guys a chance to say any final words, final thoughts, anything that you guys might have missed or that has come up. So
Sure. Yeah, I got a couple things real quick, to mention the virus experience. The one thing that we came up with, it was great, and Dad's still doing his thing from the other side. In his book, he talked about a friend of mine that came to see us way back, and hepatitis. Okay, hepatitis. That's it's a viral infection that affects and causes massive inflammation in the liver. People die, right? So Dad looked at the blood, and what does he see? He sees massive inflammation, definitely. He sees the liver, definitely. He sees her IUD. Like the holograms are crazy because we've seen dental implants and things like that that have matched. So it sees IUD. Do you know what an IUD is designed to do? It's designed to create inflammation. Okay. So he says IUD. She says, yeah, for 7 years. I was thinking about this just the other day, Josh. Kind of like to the tune of Gilligan's Island, 7-year IUD. That's like 7 years of inflammation, 7 years of trapped inflammation. So this woman did something we don't recommend to anybody, but she went in the bathroom at the clinic and she took out her IUD. Wow. Right. Dad's like, oh my God. However, let me look at your blood real quick. This is where we're at, right? So Dad looks at her blood and the inflammation is leaving the body. Okay, like we see the blood changes immediately with what we do. Inflammation is leaving the body, right?
Liver, it's balancing out.
Yeah,
The inflammation
it's balancing
is
out. Yeah. So, well, as time goes on, her hepatitis went away. She's fine. It's like, but hepatitis doesn't go away. Yeah. So here it is. This is the simple experience. Virus attacks the liver, creates inflammation, damage. It's exactly backwards. The body creates inflammation to heal, right? It gets trapped and it affects the liver. And then it creates symptoms they label virus. It's totally backwards. So with what you said, as we talk about Western experience, it's a very simple flip. When you look at the biology book with that different perspective, you get it. And this is why you have to go to 7 years of medical school and not ask questions. Dad asked questions the first year. They said, read the book. And he said, I think the book is wrong. But if you look at the book now, through all we're trying to do is have people look at life through the lens of the terrain. And we've had blinders put on. If you can look at your book that way and see that it makes sense, that's it. And this work, there's a joke we would say, which is funny and it's true and it's one thing, but Dad would say, this work is so easy, even Josh can do it. Not to put Josh down, but Josh didn't go to college. Josh didn't have to unlearn that's the most difficult thing. We had the MD in our training course, and at one point she stopped us. She said, wait, she said, I've seen what you're talking about for years, and what you said makes sense, but I'm really having a hard time with this. There's real cognitive dissonance. Her brain has been brainwashed, and she's seeing something that she knows is true, but it's confusing her. There's this inner struggle. If we can relax and just observe and look at things a little differently, and you see, what it's like? Those damn 3-dimensional books, I forgot what they call them, where it looks like this mess picture and you put it close to your face and you bring it away. And if you cross your eyes, you see the image the stereograms, I think they're called. The image comes to life and you see 3-dimensionally. It's like, wow. I love doing it with kids. Josh is going to raise his hand. But that's how, if we can live through life that way, that's a big deal. Josh, you want to raise your hand because there's still another thing. Yes, go ahead, Josh.
Well, you can finish.
Okay.
I just had two quick points, and then we'll be done. Then we'll let you go, Liev.
Okay. You can't leave. You can't leave. Yeah. You asked for this. Right now, though, Josh and I, awesome things are happening. Okay. And the reality is the research that we need to do, research has been funded by, certain experiences historically. So we just put together a GoFundMe experience, supportterrain.com. I think it's almost active. But the reality is there's new microscope technology we need to check out. Our older microscopes, the one behind Josh, if it breaks, we only have 2 left. They're not in production anymore. So we need to develop some technology. We need to experience the new technology. If you guys go to nanolive.com, you'll see some awesome microscopes, right? We need one. If anyone should have one, it should be us, okay? There's another microscope we found that does chemical analysis by spectrum analysis. And you know who has that microscope? Pfizer and Moderna. Okay, yeah. That's an expensive damn microscope. You guys want to learn something? We should have this microscope in our hands so we can really learn some things. And we've never asked people for money. If we could do what we do for free, we would. And so would Dad would have done it for free. We have. Yeah,
we did.
Yes. But so that's important. So supportterrain.com is a new experience for us. And we're really, with the courses that we're taking, or we're providing, Liev, I think we're going to have to grant you some access. You're doing some awesome things, and we would love nothing more than to solidify your foundation. If you've got thoughts and theories, and we can fill in some blanks for you, and then you can build upon that. I mean, come on, dude, you're our future. The youth are the future, right? Unless we stop them now, is what Homer Simpson would say. So we want to share this stuff. We have to pay some bills. We have to charge people for certain things, but I love what we're doing. I love what we're sharing. The people we're meeting. Crazy things are happening right now. I'm grateful that you're doing this, that you're sharing, that you're listening to us, that you're asking questions. Yay. So that's what I got to say.
Yeah, no, well said, Adam. Well said. There's just 2 quick points because I think it's important, because we've talked a lot about inflammation, but inflammation is not the bad guy. All right. Inflammation is part of how we heal. Anti-inflammatory means anti-healing. All right. So inflammation triggers the elimination process. All right. So when the inflammation becomes trapped by surgeries, injuries, things like that, we become inflamed, and that's when we have issues. If we have long-standing trapped inflammation, we start to have issues. So very important distinction. Inflammation is how we heal. And when the inflammation becomes trapped, we become inflamed. If we don't release that, we're going to start to have long-term chronic issues. So sorry, I just had to throw that in there, because one of the hardest things we have to get across, outside of don't kill the damn parasites, is that inflammation is good for you. Scientists are now working on isolating the inflammation gene to eradicate it. Right.
Dum dum
I
dum
mean,
dum dum.
The
one of the
healing
dumbest things
gene.
I mean, one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. The second part
Wow.
is just a philosophy point. My father worked and lectured with Dr. Emoto in the past. And Adam and I have got to work a lot in the past with Michiko Hayashi, who runs the Emoto Peace Project, who work with Emoto as well. Scientifically proven, words are power. And I'm still working on it. We had a couple judgments we threw out there today. You can sense some of our frustrations that are going on right now. We're working on it. We do preach non-judgment, and we're working on doing that ourselves as well. So words are power. Nothing in nature is anti. Nothing in nature is antagonistic. So I believe if you're taking an herb and putting it into your body and calling it antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, anti-parasitic, you're weakening the energy of that herb before you even put it into your body. So that's just something for people to think about. The plants are working, they're pro-bacteria, they're pro-fungal. We've heard people say that, well, if mushrooms are great because they're antifungal properties. It's like, do you understand what you just said?
Yes.
You know? So
Yeah.
yes, nature
Yeah.
is totally striving for symbiosis. The herb itself is pro-bacteria. It's going to help your terrain so the bacteria don't have to proliferate so much. It's pro-fungal. It's pro-inflammatory. It's going to make all their jobs easier. So
You got
that
it.
we
Good.
discuss a lot in our course. The course is great. We did the one live webinar each week that was supposed to be an hour. It's routinely 3 hours right now because there's so much interaction going on. We've got pathologists in the class. We've got doctors in the class. We've got lay people like myself in the class, you know. Liev, you've asked us questions which are going to help us give you answers that really help us specify towards a certain target area. There's many different angles to get to this point, as long as you're solidified in what your philosophy and your message is. So by you asking the questions, we're thinking and we're processing these things, and the class has become really interactive that way. And it's a lot of fun. I've learned so much from this course, and I felt like in the last 3 or 4 years during the stupidity, I got dumber listening to the people talk about health. So this course has been great. People come in, they get it, they're interacting, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Well, that's an important point. And yeah, I've noticed something similar with this podcast. The more that I ask the questions, it just seems that I'm learning more and more and more every episode. So I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, that's amazing. I think the inflammation point is funny. I always bring up, this is my final point. I always bring up the broken finger example. If you break your finger and then it swells up and it gets inflamed, nobody says that the inflammation broke your finger. You know,
Yeah.
that's the example that I use because
Yep.
and I think it hits home because it's the inflammation is the healing process, and that's something I never heard of them removing the inflammation gene. That's
Oh yeah.
really backwards, but kind of
Wonderful,
comical
man.
at the same time.
They're headed to they're
Take it
headed to a
away.
good place. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
and really, we
yeah,
should always remember, Josh, the last thing we always want to tell people, what Dad would say is the thing that is the best thing you can do for your health, the thing that changes the blood quickest, the thing that changes your pH quick is joy. It's something that we need to practice every day. There's so much horror in the world. And, Michiko says we have 60 to 80,000 emotional episodes a day. 80% of them are negative. We need to practice joy. It's good for your health. You feed your damn vibration, and then the law of attraction, you see what comes into the picture. So that's homework. The few things Dad would give people and Josh would give people for homework is your list of joy. 10 things that bring you joy. Life is going to happen. You get that list out. For me, a chocolate milkshake is awesome. Playing my guitar, taking a walk, talking to a friend, but these are the things that we all need in our life. And we've all earned it. We've all deserved it. You earned a piece of cake. Don't eat the whole damn cake.
We all take different paths to sickness. We all take different paths to health. If you identify with the label or your diagnosis, then you're in perfect harmony with your disease. All right. So
yeah,
you're unique. Everybody takes their own unique path. Understand what your path is.
yeah.
Good luck.
You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. Honestly, this
We know
is like
that. Thanks.
if I yeah, right, yeah, humble too, eh? Yeah.
Of course. Sorry.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
We appreciate that.
Yeah,
You're awesome too. These are the things that we enjoy. I mean, like Josh said, we could talk about this for days. It's our life. It's what we love.
yeah,
And people are interesting. I love people. A lot of people suck, but there's hope. There's so much hope
Judgment.
these days. Yeah. No
No,
opponent.
we were jazzed. I was jazzed when Ishan reached out to me and said you were doing some good stuff. Would we be on your show? And the first thing I loved is that you were young, you know. I mean, for me, I'm so happy not to be working in clinics anymore. I'm tired of working with sick people. You know, people get sick for a reason. So we want to teach people how to take care of themselves so they don't get sick.
Right.
But you know, our age group is we're dealing with older people most of the time. You know, so Ishan is fantastic. What you're doing is so freaking important right now. And yeah, we're honored to be on here. Any questions you have, reach out to us. You're on the right path, and it's people like you who are giving me more hope for humanity these days.
And if you ever get sick, let us know, because I got a feeling with the attitude and what you're learning, you
He's
don't get,
probably not
I
going to
don't
get
get,
sick.
I don't get sick unless I want to. Yeah, there's times my body
Yeah.
says it's time to stop, so pay
Dad never
attention.
got sick. Yeah.
You won't
So,
get sick.
anyways,
Funny you
we
say
can
that.
talk for hours, Liev.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
no, we could, and I'm honestly not. I'm not happy about ending this conversation, but
Part two to be continued. We'll be here for
yeah,
next time.
exactly. Yes, 100%. Yeah. So you mentioned a couple places, the GoFundMe, the course. You guys run the course. How else can they support you, learn from you? How do they find you on the internet, right? Social media
Yes,
or
Oh,
website?
School of Health also mentioned Adam.
yeah, the BigelsenAcademy.com. If you go there, we have a few things that we do. We do the consultations is one thing, only for certain areas where we can get blood to us, and it's an awesome experience for sure. Dad's books, the holographic blood book is the book. You know, that was written by him for everyone to read. But that and the Doctor's Memoir for the Germs book, you read those two books, you're going to learn a lot of stuff. All right. The other thing is we have our School of Health. Oh, he's got them. Nice. Yep. Awesome.
I just got it.
Nice.
Nice.
Well, and we have two courses. We've got our School of Health is one thing. So every other week we're online. We charge $27 a month, and we appreciate the support on that. And we have once a month. There's a webinar where we interview someone. We have a guest, and there's a topic, and the other one is just a Q&A. And it's kind of like people have so many questions for us. You know, you want to ask a question, come to the webinar. Cost you $27, and you can ask us whatever you want. You know, we also do have, you can do conversation with me for a few dollars, which is fine. People have questions. The training courses are awesome. We have a 13-week course on the terrain, introduction to terrain through the holographic blood, which is Dad's holographic blood book. And I have videos of Dad talking about every section. Like I really pulled stuff out of him. Never
It's
before
pretty
seen
awesome.
stuff.
He teaches half the course, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is
Cool.
great, you know, and it's that information. This is, I want you to have that information because your life will be different. You know, you can't unlearn this stuff. But watch our videos is one thing. It is. Watch our videos, read the books, come ask us the questions. The School of Health is great because we've got a lot of tools and videos and the people we've worked with and things like that. Josh has tapache videos on how to make some fermented stuff, and I've got qigong videos. But
Cool.
we have so much content and information that we have gathered from Dad, and it's a question of meeting people where they're at. So wherever you guys are at, we feel like we've got something for you. Check out the website, send us an email if you can, sign up for a webinar, read a book, take one of the courses, get a consultation. And actually,
I'm in charge of the Instagram account, and you know, I'm not a social media person, so it's difficult for me to be into that world. So Bigelsen Academy is the Instagram account. Please support us because I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm posting videos of Dad, myself, Adam, you know, some of Dad's great quotes. It's one of
Yeah.
those necessary things that we do these days, but it is not my world. So any help people can give us on that, bring it
Yes.
on.
Well, and the last thing I'll say, I'm just about to put out even we got a website, we're going to do some retreats. So, you know, we can meet people where they're at around the world. And at some point you can get to us and experience a lot of these things with us. Do the Qigong with me, have the blood looked at, you know, do some other things, listen to us, have the discussions about it. That's what I really want to do is get together with people. We'll be doing Anarchapulco if anyone's there, which will be awesome. There was one last thing I forgot, which I can't remember. So I guess it wasn't important. So that's about the size of that.
Awesome.
We really
That's
appreciate
great.
it, Leah. We really appreciate
No,
it.
no, the pleasure's
Awesome what
mine.
you're doing.
Yeah. No, well, likewise. I mean, you guys are visionaries in this field. I really think that you guys are making a great difference and obviously are living out the legacy of your father. And um, I like, you know, obviously he was one that shaped the field in my mind, and you guys are continuing to do that. So really, the pleasure is mine. Yeah, thanks again for coming on.
You're welcome. Con mucho
Awesome.
gusto, we say.
Yes.
Yeah, great. All right, and I want to thank you all for listening. You should know that this is not medical advice. This is for your informational purposes only. But remember, we're all responsible, sovereign beings capable of thinking, criticizing, and understanding absolutely anything. We, the people with the greater forces, are together self-healers, self-governable, self-teachers. and so much more. Please reach out if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, whatever it is. I love to chat. I'm on Instagram. You guys know where to find me. I really appreciate all you guys for listening. And listen, if you found it informative in any way or you liked it, give us a like, comment, share. That's the best way to support me and the podcast. So yeah, that's great. This was honestly, this was perfect. This is perfect. I couldn't ask for anything more. So yeah, just remember, guys, there's two types of people in the world: those who think they can, those who think they can't, and they're both correct. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Take care.